You may be on a post-Christmas diet, but do you think public bodies should be nudging you towards veganism? Meat, fish and cheese off the menu at Exeter City Council as it opts for plant-only catering.
I'm a bit disappointed considering that Devon is quite a rural county and that the livestock agriculture industry is quite big in Devon, that they're choosing to not support that.
Is the government's levelling up agenda failing too many deprived communities? And Cornwall Council forges ahead with plans to charge extra council tax on second homes.
Very, very pleased to have been part of it all, and it goes some way to start addressing the housing imbalances that we've got across Cornwall.
And joining us today we have East Devon's Conservative MP Simon Jupp down the line from Exmouth, for Labour Cornwall Councillor Kate Ewart keeping me company here in the studio, and for our first discussion on the merits of veganism we also have consultant gastroenterologist Dr Alan Desmond and Andrew Butler from the NFU. A warm welcome to all of you. Now, Exeter City Council has insisted it's not against meat eating after deciding it will serve only plant-based foods during internal meetings. The policy will come into effect from May, with the council claiming it's better for health and the environment. But the decision has faced criticism from some in the farming community who argue that locally sourced meat and dairy can also be sustainable. Ewan Meary's been to a farm near Totnes to find out more.
Hannah and her brother Ollie are beef and sheep farmers near Totnes. They've begun selling meat directly to the public to help boost their incomes. But it's something they'll now have a harder time trying to sell to Exeter City Council, which will be serving less meat from now on to help tackle climate change.
I think considering that Devon is a rural county and there's a really large livestock agriculture industry here, it is quite disappointing that they're choosing to not support that, and there's a lot of small family farms that are reliant on local custom, and I think that is quite disappointing because farming is struggling at the moment.
So what's the council doing? It's passed a motion ensuring that by May, all food provided at internal meetings will be plant-based. It's also going to tell cafes in public buildings like leisure centres to have plant-based options advertised clearly on menus. And by forming a new cross-party group, it says it will work to ensure that plant-based food is a core part of its offer wherever practical.
It's widely recognised by the UN, by the Climate Change Committee, that meat consumption needs to be reduced. So we're not saying meat's bad. We're recognising that the leading scientists in this field are saying we need to reduce the amount of meat we eat. That's not stop, that's reduce.
Now, it's not just for the planet that Exeter Council wants us to eat less meat. They're saying it's also better for our health. But is that always the case? In front of me here, I've got some soy-based tofu and some good old British chicken. Now, the tofu does have far fewer calories, but the chicken's got a lot less fat and about double the protein. That means it could help to fill you up for longer. But health authorities say we should in fact eat less red and processed meat. And a well-known Devon doctor, Alan Desmond, has told his social media followers he supports the plans.
There are so many reasons for an NHS frontline healthcare professional or doctor to support an organisation that decides to only serve healthy plant-based meals. Disease prevention, pandemic prevention, dealing with the climate change. These are the three most immediate threats to human health.
And it's not just Exeter. Councils in Oxfordshire, Cambridge and London have adopted similar policies. But is it the right approach for Devon's county capital?
Is an assault against our farmers. They're saying they don't want local milk, they don't want local meat, they just don't want it anywhere near Exeter City Council. I think that's absolutely appalling. It's not only embarrassing for the council, but it's a huge disappointment for me.
While global meat production does account for a large share of carbon emissions, local farmers say that their meat is sustainably produced, often in areas where crops can't be grown. And with plant-based foods often imported from around the world, finding exactly the right choice is far from simple.
Well, it comes as the head of the Food Standards Agency has likened bringing cake into offices to passive smoking in pubs, a message supported by the Labour MP for Exeter, Ben Bradshaw. He says she's been pilloried for this, but has highlighted the menace of office feeders and the government's total abandonment of any obesity strategy, which will cost the NHS billions. Right, well, back to veganism. I want to begin with you, Alan. I mean, in a letter to the Express and Echo newspaper in Exeter, you make some very bold claims for the health benefits of a vegan diet. You say people who describe their diet as vegan or plant-based are 50% less likely to develop heart disease and 70% less likely to develop type 2 diabetes. I mean, I'm interested in the evidence to support that. And if the evidence is so compelling, why, for instance, doesn't the NHS website advise people to adopt veganism, whereas in its section on nutrition, it has lots of positive things to say about meat, dairy, and especially fish?
So thanks very much for having me on today. As I wrote in my letter, by promoting plant-based meals, Exeter Council are following the evidence, and they're promoting increased consumption of the foods that benefit human health, help to reduce the risk of chronic disease, and will also help to reduce the risk of further zoonotic pandemics, just like COVID-19. Now, the health benefits of eating more healthy vegan foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and leafy greens are firmly established. And in fact, if you look at the current NHS Eat Well guide, you will see that those are the foods that make up most of the food on the plate. And when it comes to eating protein-rich foods, even the NHS official guidance right now encourages British people to eat more legumes and beans and protein-rich plant-based foods as their first choice of protein.
I mean, it's certainly true that the guidance is that people don't eat enough fruit and vegetables. But if you look at as I say, the NHS website, there's certainly plenty of positive stuff about meat, fish and dairy, whereas if the evidence is so compelling, you'd think the NHS website would be saying you really should be considering a completely vegan diet. My point is it's not saying that.
Well, absolutely. Well, there's plenty of NHS resources highlighting methods to eat less meat. And I must say the current NHS Eat Well guide is a little bit overdue an update. And if you look beyond the UK, for example, looking at the more recent Canadian healthy eating guidelines or some of the healthy eating guidelines in Europe right now, you will notice something very interesting. The meat and dairy sections are disappearing from evidence-based dietary guidelines. The public are now being advised to eat more protein foods and to choose plant protein first. And when it comes to staying hydrated, the dairy section is gone, milk is gone, and good old-fashioned clean drinking water is recommended as the first choice to stay hydrated. The evidence shows that, I was just going to say, the evidence shows that people who label their approach to food as plant-based or mostly plant-based or even vegan eat more of the foods that keep us healthy, eating more fiber, more folate, more vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, eating more magnesium, potassium. All of these things have great health benefits.
Okay, I want to bring Andrew in. I mean, you represent, the NFU represents a range of farmers, of course, people who produce plant-based foods, but also people who produce dairy and meat. What do you make of this?
Yeah, well, what's great about the West Country is we have farmers that produce everything. You know, they do produce plants and vegetables, but also they produce some of the most sustainable beef, dairy and eggs in the world. And that's what I think our institutions like Exeter City Council should be celebrating. And they should be looking to source local and promote that in their areas so people can understand the benefits that brings not only to their health, because I trust the NHS. The NHS talk about balanced diet and everything in moderation. And that importantly includes dairy, eggs, meat, poultry, and vegetables and legumes, etc. So that's what's important, is that everyone balances their diet and a little bit of everything, and that way they'll stay healthy, and hopefully they can fight off any diseases that come their way. If you look at red meat, and of course the Southwest is a great beef producing area, I mean, there is a consensus, isn't there, clearly, that we should eat less red meat. And when we look at the environmental aspect, there is great concern that meat production isn't the most environmentally friendly thing to be doing. All food production has an environmental footprint, so that doesn't matter if that's almond milk from California or beef and lamb from the West Country. But what I think is important is you look at everything in the round and you look at all the metrics. So, you know, we've got beef and lamb in the southwest that takes an inedible protein, grass, and then they convert that, sorry, inedible products, grass, and then they convert that into an edible protein that otherwise we wouldn't be able to use. So that's important. And not only that, they also manage our landscape, and which is great for the tourist industry, which plenty of other businesses rely on. So it's important to look at everything, not just one metric.
Alan, if you look at the environmental aspect, I mean, a lot of people have concern about beef being brought in from huge ranches in South America, possibly associated with rainforest destruction and that kind of thing. Andrew's point is that his members, NFU members, aren't involved in that kind of thing. They're involved in small-scale, environmentally friendly livestock production in places like Devon and Cornwall, and actually this is the best use of that land, arguably.
Well, the first point is, of course, that neither the council nor myself are in any way attacking farmers. I've got lots of patients who are farmers. I've spoken to farmers about these exact issues. And what they described to me is that in the last 30 years, they've seen huge changes in that industry, and they are now being asked to constantly produce more and more meat for less and less money.
OK. Kate, what do you make of your Labour colleagues' decision in Exeter?
I mean, I think they've made a decision that they think is right for their authority. I don't know that Cornwall Council. Well, you know, I'm not on their authority. I haven't seen all the papers, so I can't talk about their judgment.
There's a principle, though, isn't there, as to whether you should offer choice or whether you should remove choice.
And that's what I was coming to. You know, Cornwall Council, we offer a vegan option in all of our restaurants. If we do have catered meetings, which I'm yet to attend one that's catered, we would have a vegan option as well as a meat option, I'm absolutely sure. So it's about choice, and it's about making sure that people have that option so they can have the balanced diet. But I don't think we should be dictating to people how they should eat. OK,
Simon, a very forthright view there from your colleague, neighbour, Chris Loder. What do you make of it?
I think that what Exeter City Council are doing here is a load of virtual signalling nonsense, and it's also a big letdown for local farmers. Local farmers, meat and dairy farmers, surround Exeter. They produce amazing food. The City Council should be celebrating that, not neglecting them, letting them down, and talking about doing a policy like this. I'm sure they've got much better things to be doing than talking about whether they should be serving plant-based meals. They're a local council, for goodness sake.
OK, we'll leave it there.